Good morning. And I'd like to thank everybody who's joining us via Zoom. Just as a reminder, please use your uh, mute button at the now, and then when ready to talk, please let us know. You can on the bottom of your screen, you'll see something called reactions. For those of you that would choose to join us later on sometime for some reason. And if you want to raise your hand, that puts you to the top of the list so that we see you. And then and then we'll ask you that you can raise your question, unmute yourself, of course. And then afterwards, you can do something like this and you can be heard better. Uh, but then if you lower your hand, then that'll put you back into the queue with everyone else. So it's kind of a nice little feature so that, you can be spotted and we can see you. We do monitor the chat. And for next week, because I don't want to get in the way of anyone, next week we'll have the superintendent of the state patrol. I believe that's his official title. Good. Hey, got one right. And he'll be talking about the various roles that the state patrol do. And it's actually quite varied. And they have a wide range of responsibilities. And they were one of the first entities that was created when they decided to do something silly like license automobiles. And so with that, it's one of the oldest elements within the Department of Transportation. And we'll be having the superintendent speak to us next week about their role and what they do and those kinds of things. So it should be very interesting. He has a distinguished career, and it's written up in the moments and those kinds of things. And I don't want to do any disservice by talking about him now, because we're going to listen to Toni and company to deal with the asylums. And I think everyone can see you, and I should probably get back into the screen a little bit. And I'm going to get out of the way. There's a lot that are not muted. Well, again, folks, if you'd be kind enough to mute yourselves. The reason why this is kind of important is that if you start to rustle papers or something like that, sometimes Zoom is smart enough to hear you, and then it'll say, oh, hey, you should be the speaker. And so if you mute yourself, then that doesn't happen. So without any further ado, I want to get out of the way.
Okay. Hi. I'm Toni Swandby, and you guys can introduce yourself. I'm chair of the Midvale Immigration Action Team, which kind of got us into this whole thing. And we're going to talk a little bit today about the path an asylum seeker takes from the time they get released from detention to either getting asylum or being deported back to their country. So why don't you guys introduce yourselves? I think it's on.
Is it on now? Yep, I got it. Okay, so I'm Mark Swandby, and my main claim to fame is I'm Toni's husband. And I'm going to introduce Ngwa.
He can introduce himself.
I am, but I want to say
Okay.
something about the way his name is pronounced.
Yeah,
Basically, it's NGWA, but the N is mostly silent. So I just say Ngwa all the time. And normally we would look at his last name and say Augustine, but the preferred pronunciation is Augustine with the emphasis on the second syllable, right? So I'll turn it over to Ngwa.
Hello, good morning. My name is Ngwa Augustine.
hold it right by your mouth.
Ngwa Augustine. Like what you say for us, when you say Augustine, it sounds like a lady's name. So we say Augustine. Thank you.
So today we have a slide show that we're going to use. The people that are here in person have a paper copy of the timeline that an asylum seeker goes through while they're seeking asylum. And last, if we could go ahead and start sharing the screen and show the slideshow. Those of you at home will be able to see what folks here have in their hand, if they have it in their hand. Can you just well, technical difficulties. Does it work if you just put it in the slideshow view or no? If you just click right here, it'll go. Okay, hopefully it'll be it's not quite on the screen, but that's okay. So this is just the title. So go ahead, next slide. No, that's not it. Otherwise, okay. So we have to tell the truth about this is truth in advertising here. So the ELCA Amparo program, which Midvale is a supporting member congregation of, Amparo stands for Accompanying Migrant Minors with Protection, Advocacy, Representation, and Opportunity, I think. You can correct me if I'm wrong. They put on a training program last spring to teach for people to prepare their congregations to sponsor and host asylum seekers, because the need was so great. They were hoping that congregations would step up and do that. And I thought it was about time that we got trained to host an asylum seeker. So I did the training. It was 3 weeks long. And the timeline that we're going to look at today is what they present as the steps for an asylum seeker going through the process, either until they get granted asylum or until they get deported. After I get done with the training, the Immigration Action Team met over the summer and said, yeah, we want to do this. We want to get Midvale to sponsor an asylum seeker or a small family. We thought we would create a budget small enough to accommodate maybe 1 or 2 parents and a child if need be, but not much bigger than that. We thought we could do that. And then we would present it to the Congregational Council for approval. And we would look for ways to fund it and all that kind of stuff. So as of the 18th of this month, the council voted unanimously to move ahead with this. Our proposal is like an 18 or I think it's a 11, 12 page detailed document of everything that this would entail. And that's a whole nother presentation. So we won't go on from there. But so what we're going to do today, go ahead, next slide, is go through this timeline that will show what we're going to do. Midvale will sponsor an asylum seeker or a small family for a period of 2 years. We will provide help with food, clothing, housing, and anything else that's needed during that time. And with the hopeful coaching to get the person or people independent and assimilated into the community. And we will take candidates from one of the 2 pro bono immigration clinics here in Madison, the UW Immigrant Justice Clinic, who was Ngwa's representation, and still is, and the Community Immigration Law Center, which is housed in First Congregate?
It's on Gorham Street.
Yeah,
Is it a Presbyterian church?
Grace Presbyterian, First Presbyterian, maybe, yeah.
Anyway,
And they have this clinic and people can go there and get help with their asylum cases. And the county actually supports their efforts. And the county has decided that Dane County will be a universal representation site. So any candidate that we would get from one of these clinics would have their legal services already in place and county support, which is huge. So go ahead, next slide. What happens to the 2 law clinics is exactly what happened to Ngwa. Do you want to talk about when you got released in the mad scramble that brought you into our house?
Yeah, before I start into this, there's a little story about this before this part of it. You know, one of the scariest moments of my life was when I get into the US. I was seriously depressed because when you get into the border, you are being chained. The chain is so serious, like the chain I've never been chained in my life. I've never seen somebody in my life being chained that way. They chain you, that's the beginning of your depression. You start thinking, where am I going to? What is happening to me? I thought I was going somewhere that I could get being saved or something. But it turns around, my head starts spinning around. I said, this is crazy. Reached to an extent that I know of the Spanish people in the detention, they start fighting each other. They were so frustrated about the whole thing. They take you, after they take you to the detention, you stay there for some time. Those ICE officers, they don't encourage you. They discourage that. They started telling all kind of stuff. You can't get it. You have to stay up to 3 months, 5 months. You can't apply for this. You can't do this. You can't do this. They give you all sort of discouragement for you not to have hope. That's the second part of depression. Second part of it, right now, at that time, when we're coming to the southern border, they don't tell you anything. You say, get here, you get here. Stay there, you stay there. You stay there for some time. I remember when I was being transferred. How come they arrest me? You ask me that. How come I was arrested in southern border? I find myself in Chicago, in Wisconsin. I just sleeping. Just get up around 12 o'clock in the night. They got up around 12 o'clock in the night. I said, okay, you are going somewhere. Where am I going to? They don't say. They tell you nothing. You are being chained. I was chained from like 12 in the morning to almost 6 o'clock the next day. Without no food. All the time we were flying to Chicago. That's the third part of depression. So after I was brought in, traveled some distance, like from Chicago to Wisconsin, put us in detention, started putting us in our various cell blocks whatsoever. We're there and they don't tell you nothing. And I tell you, out of they only tell you have to get a lawyer or pre-bonus lawyer. I can tell you, like, they don't give you no way to get a lawyer. You can't call. You have limited access to call. You don't have no money, nothing you have. So at that time, they tell you to call. You don't have anybody to call. And I can tell you, out of 1,000 of them, just like 1 or 2 can get a lawyer, a pre bono lawyer. It's so difficult to get a lawyer in there. That's the fourth part of everything, the depression. You start thinking, you're not able to see your family, you're not able to call your family. What happens to me? Where you don't know the way forward, you don't know what is going on. They just keep you there for nothing. Okay, then from there, after you've been released, it comes to this part of it. And just to remind you, there's people that have been in detention for 2 years. No case, nothing. Just keep them there.
Not him. Other
Not me.
people have been.
There are other
They're
people have
just
been. I
there.
met people that have been here for two years. And some they keep them for 2 years, and at the tail end of it, without lawyer, they deport them back. So it's out there. I was there for I got in, that was July. I left around, that was November. I was there for 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was there for 3 months.
So tell him, so he ended up getting picked by the UW Immigrant Justice Clinic, and they said they would represent him.
Yeah, how it comes, they normally comes in every, I think once in a month. Like
Yeah.
they just come and do immigration. They just come there for advice with the student and everything. So many of us were feeling discouraged to attend it because you have to sign up for it before you attend the next day. So there was one time I said I was almost the last person to sign up with it. I said, well, what am I signing up for? Because I don't see any way forward.
Slower, Ngwa.
I said, why am I signing for it? Because I don't see any way forward. So I just said something, just said, sign up for it. You don't know. What are you doing yourself? Just go there, at least you have a walk. I signed up for it. I took a walk. I went there and I met all the other guys, all the other students, they could speak Spanish. So the only person that could speak English was Maggie.
Yeah.
So they asked me to sit down with Maggie. After talking with Maggie for some time, she told me they could take on, she will give my case, introduce my case to other lawyers and everything, and they will see what they could do. When she was saying that, I never believe anything. I just said, she's just saying what she said just to calm me down. I just forgot about it. I left and I went. And moreover, when they came, he said, student lawyer, what can they do for you?
She's a student.
Yeah, she was a student. What can she? I need a real lawyer that can understand what is going on. So from there, they left. Still, like, I was almost no reply, nothing. I got a call from Erin.
Erin Barbado is
Erin Barbado, the director
she's
of.
the director of the Immigrant Justice Clinic.
So she called me and asked me. She won't represent me. I said, really? I said, oh. I said, okay. Okay. I say, okay. She called me and like she stayed again, like after like 2 weeks, she didn't call me. I said, maybe she has given up. Anyway, I didn't believe her. And there was this thing they called credible fear interview. That was the first part of Asylum.
Mhm.
That was the first part of it before this part.
Yeah.
You get to what they call credible fear interview. In that interview, they test your credibility, whether you have a good case for them to present you in front of a judge.
Ngwa, we only have 45 minutes
Yeah.
total.
So from there, I went for the interview and I made it through. Erin called me and they started representing me and Maggie and all the rest. And from there, I got released from detention.
So he got released from detention and he was going to live with his cousin, Bernadine. And at that time, she lived in Fridley, Minnesota, just north of the Minneapolis. And she talked to her landlord about him coming to live with her. And he's already out, right? On condition that he has a place to live with a US citizen. And the landlord said no. So that's where Ben Kempinen comes in. So Erin was a colleague of Ben's at the law school, and she knew that we had housed people from road home here. And she reached out to Ben and sent this email about this guy. And Ben knew I was working with the immigration action team and said, any ideas about how we can help this person? And it said, like, he had an impeccable record in detention. He was fluent in English, and he was an incredible human. I thought, okay, that's a pretty good vetting. So I told them to talk to the Dane Sanctuary Coalition because they were looking at helping asylum seekers. And then I talked to Mark. You want to talk about that part?
I said, okay, well, if he can't get anywhere else, I guess he could probably live with us.
Yeah. So the next morning we talked to Maggie, the student, and she said, I hear you have some ideas. And I said, yeah, I have a couple. And I told her about the Sanctuary Coalition and she knew how to get hold of them. And she said, and you have another idea? And I said, yeah, he can live with us. Now, don't ask me. Well, you'd have to ask the Holy Spirit how this all happened. I mean, really, it's not something that Mark and I would normally just jump up and do. Right? So that was on November 11th, we got the first email, and he moved in on November 23rd. So we had this little time of getting ready. It was like, all told, it was about 11 days where we had to,
Yeah.
make it happen.
What I was going to say is keep in mind the timeline here. We won't talk about all the time it took him to get to the United States from Cameroon. That's another talk. But he got to the United States in about July, and that's when they put him in prison, which is what we do with those people. And then he was there until about November, which is when he came to live with us. Remember, this is in 2019. We're in 2021 now,
Yeah,
and we're still, well, we'll just keep going.
yeah. So we
That's-
did the things on
takes
this
forever.
timeline. We, we made his bed. And people at Midvale, neighbors, people helped us get clothing. Maggie and the other last student, Millen, took him, where'd they take you? Target to get clothes?
that was the first.
Yeah,
Stop somewhere. Remember we were going to Chicago. We stopped somewhere. I told you the.
oh,
mall or
yeah,
something
because you
like that.
got released in
Got
Chicago.
food. They started trying to make me understand the kind of food they have, like to understand my test and everything. And that was the first place we stopped.
Yeah,
From there, they take
okay.
clothing.
So he got out and turned right back around and went back in and said, I can't survive, it's too cold here. So they needed, everybody helped him get clothes. So let's have the next slide.
Now we can't convince him to put a jacket on. We go.
Yeah, yeah, he's just like a kid. It's terrible. Put your coat on, it's cold out. Okay, so he got to our house. Ngwa, just really briefly, tell him what you thought when you found out you were coming to live with us.
Yeah, like what was going on in my head, I was scared first. I was really scared about it. I thought of it. Like she said, it's just all about the Holy Spirit of grace and faith. Just say, okay, God, I'm in your hands. Do whatever you want to do. I just pick my back and I move.
Yep. And Mark, what did you think about while we were waiting for him to come?
Well, it was okay with me. I mean, we fortunately have a house situation and other things that we have resources to be able to handle someone. Turns out our house used to be owned by Clarence and Margaret Filkey,
Charles and
who
Margaret.
were,
Marjorie.
oh, sorry, Margaret.
Yeah.
Okay, well, anyway, they had Suzanne Filkey and she was a
Remember her?
special person and she had her own room downstairs that has its own bathroom and its own refrigerator. And so it's like a little efficiency apartment.
Yeah.
So while this was Tony's sewing room at the time, we were well set up to have someone stay with us, which may not always be the case, but
Yeah.
so it all worked out fine. I mean,
Yeah.
we actually, long story, we picked him up at the bus
Park and ride.
park and ride out
Dutch
on Stoughton Road. And we went to Perkins to get something to eat, but he wasn't very hungry that night. And I think he was a little bit wondering who these people were and what's going on. But then we took him home and it turned out this was at Thanksgiving. And then we immediately left the next day for a trip that we had long planned. And I think he spent Thanksgiving with Maggie's family.
Yeah.
But then we came home after the trip and he's basically been with us since. So
Yeah. So we looked up Cameroonian food and my buddy Gail Perlberg here, who had a recipe for groundnut stew, West African groundnut stew. And I asked her to make him some because he was coming. But you weren't going to be home because it was Thanksgiving time, right? So you just gave me the recipe. Well, so I proceeded to try and make groundnut stew. You better give him the thing back. So I'm here with this guy who I just barely knew, right? And he said, no. Grabs my wooden spoon from me and the food started flying into the pot.
There's a difference. Like you guys, the way you cook here, you do everything in measurement. In Africa, we
With
don't measure anything.
recipes.
With recipes and everything, we don't just use measurement. I just weigh it with my hands. They smell, the test. That's how I cooked. I just feel the smell. The test. I touch it with my hand. I just mix everything in the pot and it's done.
Yeah. And it was delicious when it was done. And I thought, all right, he can cook his own food. This is all right. So then the next thing that happened was that with a big family melting together was our older children Melanie is our oldest daughter, and her family, Mike is her husband, and the beloved grandson Orion is their kid. And then Mike's parents and Maria, our younger daughter, and her fiance Charlie all came for Christmas, but they came at New Year's. And Ngwa did all the cooking. And it was pretty amazing. And the kids joined in, and everybody, like everything, it was just this wonderful learning experience for all of us. And it was pretty cool. So he was assimilated into our family with just no trouble at all. Okay, why don't you go ahead to the next slide? We'll try and keep going. You leave some time for questions. Okay, so when did you actually, so the lawyers took care of all the legal applications. The I-589 here is the application for asylum. Was that right when you got released?
I was still in detention when they fired that. That was October. I was still in detention.
Okay, all right. And at that time, it's worse now, but at that time, you could get employment 6 months after you applied for asylum. Now, does that make any sense? You're going to bring these people, you're going to let them in, you're going to let them sit there and not work for 6 months, and now it's a year because of the previous administration, and that one hasn't been fixed yet. I mean, that's just silly. There's a little thing down here, the employment permit. You are barred from getting a work permit if you entered without inspection. See, it says EWI on the slide. And EWI it means that you didn't cross at a legal border crossing. So if you crossed illegally, you were barred from getting a work permit. So all the people who are undocumented in our community don't have a legal work permit, which is kind of an interesting situation. So all this hourglass in the middle of the slide is really important. It took, him 6 months till he got a work permit. It takes people now a year. And during that time, you support them with all those services on the far side of the slide. Medical services, if they need ESL classes, helping them get enrolled in school, all the stuff that comes with that, showing them where food pantries are, helping them access food pantries and other sources of food, give them money for food, food cards, whatever. If you're a male between the ages of 18 and 25, you have to register with the selective services. And you bring them here, you don't let them do anything, but you make them register for the draft. Yeah, I don't know.
I was just going to say, I mean, I'm sort of speaking for Ngwa here, but this may have been part of the hardest time when he was here, because he's here in the new environment. There's basically nothing he can do except wait around, and a lot of uncertainty still going on in all of this. We would, for the first part of it, we were able to take him to some of our activities and things. We took him to our curling club and that, but then in March, we all know
The
what happened. The pandemic hit. So in some ways, it shut a lot of things down. At least it gave us, we were around a lot, and I think that helped. But maybe we just keep going here.
Yeah. Well, the one thing on here that we might want to talk about, we did have some challenges along the way. One of the items on this list is state ID. We decided to help him get a driver's license. And maybe you guys want to talk about the leveling of anxiety of the female member of this family while that was going on.
So Ngwa knows how to drive, and he did know how to drive in Cameroon, but it was a bit of a challenge to learn how to drive in the United States. And part of it, for example, and I guess he can comment if he wants, part of the example is they don't have intersection control in Cameroon. So basically, when he'd drive down the street there, you'd have to almost slow down at every intersection and stop to make sure nobody's coming or you get run over. All right. Well, when you're going down Odana Road and you stop at Holiday in the middle of the road, there are people behind you that are not really excited about all that sort of thing. So, and there was things about lane changes and just reading the road signs and things like that.
I don't have any of that.
They don't have any of this stuff.
Yeah,
So,
he wants to talk more.
yeah, so it took a little while, but he did learn.
Yeah, yeah, like in Cameroon is different. We don't have no signs, no road signs. You just drive. Like I was cautious about it. So when I'm getting to an intersection, I'm not supposed to stop. I'm just supposed to like have the right of the way. I have to slow down and look. People will be it's just part of it. It was just different from what I have been through.
And then one of us did the majority of riding with him when he got his learner's permit. And it was definitely the wrong one. Do you guys want to talk about my level of anxiety during this? Well, go ahead. Just tell him what I was like.
Like she will be sitting opposite, right? It still happens sometimes. Like but right now,
Yeah.
the rate of it has reduced. Like sometimes when I'm right getting to intersection, she start. I just see her legs start. So I'll turn and ask her, "Are you okay? Is anything wrong?" I say, "I got it. Just let it."
Relax. If he didn't move out during that, he was never going to do it.
And getting the driver's license was a big step because I think I may be going a little bit fast
this
here,
is
but he did get his work permit and he started working at, well, Frank's Liquor for a little while.
Go
What?
ahead and change the slide.
Change the slide. And
Yeah.
then he was also working part-time at Amazon. Well, he couldn't drive himself at this point, and it was the night shifts. So the big part about Amazon was that he would start at for 4 hours. He'd start at 11:30 at night. So unfortunately, I'm a late night person, but I would drive him there and then maybe relax for a couple hours and then go pick him up at 3:30 a.m. So this went on for a while until he did get his license. And when he could start, just like your kids, I think when they can start driving themselves, it's a big step in your life, right? So,
Yeah. Employment was kind of a point of contention among us.
well,
When,
he was trying to work 2 full-time jobs at one time
and a part-time job.
and a part-time job. And he was kind of,
You
but-
see the look on your face? That's exactly how it was.
he's very ambitious, I'll tell you that. But it was getting to be a little bit over much. And so we kind of negotiated with him and decided so he could get a little bit of sleep sometime. But I think it was partly he just wanted to fill his days too. But he
Is that
did,
right, Ngwa?
eventually he did get a job at UW Hospital, which was, and he still would work part-time at Amazon a little bit, but UW Hospital was working in environmental services. But the big part about it was the benefits, and you know how important health insurance is here. So that was a very big step for him too. And I'll keep moving ahead too. He was there for environmental service for about a year. And then after a year, he applied for a medical assistant program. And now they're currently employing him and he's going to school to learn to be a medical assistant. That'll be 10 to 12 months. And also,
Not only that,
and not only that, he actually has a master's degree in accounting.
No.
I mean, sorry, a bachelor's degree in accounting from Nigeria. And that's more story behind that. But that was accepted as an accredited degree here in the United States. So now he's applied for a master's degree in healthcare or health administration. Healthcare administration. So he's also studying that at the same time. So he's working on medical assistant and getting that. So we're moving along quite well. But he's
Yeah.
smart and he speaks English well and he's ambitious and works hard. So that's so anyway, we probably got to keep going, but
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm glad when you get done with this semester, you'll have 15 credits done to your,
When I get done last semester, I did 3 courses.
yeah.
This one is 3. So if I'm done, I'll be done with 15. credit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's,
that
it's
should be
an,
half of the program already.
it's online and it's through UW La Crosse. But there are several campuses that administer this program, and that's just the one he's in. It's like getting an MBA online, except, and that was funny. He told us when he first came that he wanted to get an MBA because he had an accounting degree. But then I said, well, what made you change your mind? So tell him.
Yeah, probably maybe it's what I've been through. My perspective of life just changes, and I decided I want to just change from accounting to healthcare. Just happened.
Yeah. So, all right, so let's go to the next slide. So this part was actually just happened in on September 1st. We're doing this waiting and waiting and waiting, talking back and forth. We talk all the time. He talks constantly to his family in Cameroon. Some unexpected things happen that are just completely, to me, heart-wrenching. Do you want to talk about Aqua's cousin and her assault and what happened with the baby?
Yeah, like my wife, she has a cousin. She was raped by the military, and at that time, I was going through a lot. But when I talked to them, she wanted to abort the baby when she was raped. But I talked to her not to do it. That the baby was, and that time the baby was like for almost like 5 months,
Yeah,
and it was a risk for her and the baby. So I tried to get into her, talk to her about the situation and everything, and I told her I would take full responsibility of the baby, which I did. And the baby is, she just talked.
yeah.
That was yesterday.
14 months. I
It's
talked
14
to the
months old.
baby.
Yeah. So sometimes I say the changes you make, helping someone, a single person, you may help down the generation for line for years to come. So I just did it. At that time, I had no way to even take care of my family. But I just said the little I just had to squeeze it and give it to them. And today the baby is alive because of me. And they gave her name, combination of his name and her name to the baby.
So his name is Mark Toni. And I saw him yesterday and I talked to him and he's a cute little boy. He's really cute. But that was just I mean, some of the stuff he does is just blows you away how generous and kind he is.
Yeah, just say quickly, things in Cameroon are still not good for his family, and we're still working on getting his family here. But I guess that's probably farther down the list here as
Yeah.
this. But
Well, getting asylum was a huge one. Do you guys want to hear about the actual asylum court experience?
well, okay, we can talk about that a little bit. So
Just a
so
little.
this is, remember, I'm keeping the timeline. He came to us in November of 2019, has applied for asylum. He finally gets a court case because or a court appointment for his hearing, because our UW lawyers were very assertive in asking for expedited service. So finally on September 1, he gets his hearing in Chicago. So
And what was it, like 3 weeks before the hearing, they let him know
they let him know. And so we went down, it's right in downtown Chicago. And we went down the night before and stayed overnight in a hotel just to make sure we would be there, take away a little bit of the nervousness of driving down the morning before. And we go in and we weren't sure whether they would allow us to go into the hearing, but
because of COVID.
because of COVID and they have the protocols and all that. The lawyers went in and asked the judge if it would be okay, and the judge said fine. So we were in there. So they start the hearing, and there's his lawyers. There's a lawyer from
It's a trial,
it's a trial. There's
Yeah.
a federal
Homeland Security.
Homeland Security lawyer there who's questioning. And so they ask, well, the lawyers put together, I believe it like 3 or 4 inches of documents that were put together for his case and his application that the judge is leafing through. They ask Ngwa a bunch of questions. He answers them. Mostly his lawyer led through all of this. Then the government, the federal government's lawyer talked for a while, and he was trying to think of reasons. Well, Ngwa has injuries from when he was in Cameroon, all right? And
From his torture and.
from his
beatings.
torture and things that were going on there. And the government lawyer was trying to say, well, you play soccer, couldn't that have come from a soccer and all this? Well, they had two expert witnesses. One was a doctor who had examined him and taken pictures of his injuries when he was first here. And that was a little bit off-putting because she had the wrong date. And so she was remote and they called her and she didn't have his records ready. It hadn't reviewed them recently, but she did kind of muddle her way through it and convinced and answered that no, these were appropriate to the type of treatment he's claiming. So we got through that. Then they also had an expert witness. We don't know where she's from, but I think she was a professor at a university to talk about the situation in
Somewhere out east, like in New York.
somewhere out east in
Yeah.
Cameroon, because the government lawyer was saying, well, that was 2 years ago. He could come back now and he'd be okay. They said, no, it's even worse there than it was. So that was about the end of that. And then then it was up to the judge and the judge, I still get shivers about this. The judge started
Yeah.
reading through and says, based on this reason and this reason and this reason, we will grant asylum to Ngwa.
I mean, it just got more, she talked for quite a while and it just got more and more obvious that, I mean, I was
And
falling by that point, and
yeah, and the government,
we were
the
supposed to. be
government
quiet.
lawyer had no objections to it, and that was that. So
Yeah, like that time I was really nervous, but the lawyer close to me wrote it down. She's granting you asylum. She was just reading a bunch of laws. I didn't understand anything she was saying. She was just reading it because of that and that and that. I was, are they trying to give me asylum or what? He just wrote it that she's granting you asylum. So at that time I was calm before she said it. So
Yeah. So that's where we are.
then we came back to Madison.
So when I was going through this training, they train you on what to do if the person gets deported. And when I got to that part of this training, well, I just couldn't go there. I just couldn't imagine that.
Yeah, so that's one of the things about it. As we go ahead here in Midvale to do this, really, at some point, the cases will be adjudicated by the government and by the judge. And it may well be that the people are not granted asylum. So we have to be aware of that. The one thing about going through the local organizations is they do vet people, and especially UW Law Clinic would probably not take someone on that they didn't think they would be able to get through, because they're training students. They want it to be successful. That's my take on all of that. But really, this is a decision point, and it's a real decision point. So they may or may not allow them to stay, just depending on what the case is. But the other point I'll make is, can you imagine trying to go through this without a lawyer to do all of this for you? And that's what many of these people have to do. They'll go into the judge by themselves. I've heard, talking to other people, that some people go in on their own and the judge bends over backwards to try to get them to, say things that will have a positive outcome for them, and they just really don't understand the system well enough. And I heard of one case where they said, well, maybe you should go back and work on this a little bit more. But you can see how difficult this whole system is when someone says, why don't they just apply legally and go through the system? Well, it's set up to make it very, very difficult for anybody to do, especially on their own. But so
Let's go to the next slide. So when we as Midvale sponsor our next asylum seeker, what can we do? I think the first thing we can do is open our hearts. That's the most important thing. We can welcome a new child of God to our homes. We can help them worship if they choose to worship with us. One of the neatest things that happened the night we met in Ngwa was that before Maggie and Millen, the law students, left him at our house, he said, is there church tomorrow? Are you going to church tomorrow? Can I please come? And then, okay, we're good. And we need to embrace the traditions. There are things that I can't believe all the things we've learned about the African culture and his culture, and kindness and generosity.
and this shirt, by the way, that I have showed everybody. This Ngwa bought me this. This is
His Father's Day present.
Cameroon colors down here, which are the roots and growing up into the tree in the United States. So
Yep. And then we can give rides, we can donate grocery cards, we can help with clothing, we can help furnish an apartment for somebody, depending on where they end up living. We can expect miracles because they most certainly happen. We can pray for them. I can't tell you how much praying we all did at our house. And just love them.
there is one thing we haven't really talked about finances here, and I'll do this even though it reflects on us a little bit. But when Ngwa came to live with us, we just decided that we were going to support him whenever we could, and I guess we're fortunate that financially we were able to do that sort of thing. But even after he got his jobs, our goal was to make sure that he gets some money saved up. So when his family finally comes, he'll be able to get out independently with them. They'll probably live with us for a while, but then get out independently and just make his life here in the United States. So we haven't required him to really contribute much into his room and board, if you want to call that. But what I really want to say is he has gotten a lot of support from Midvale members. And I'm looking around at some of the people that have done it. And I won't, say who they were here, but a lot of support too, as well as through the pastors. They've helped with some of his tuition. They've helped with paying for passports for his family in Cameroon because they're going to need them when they come here. And a lot of this has come through Midvale. So there's been a lot of support there too. But the point will be that sort of thing is something that Midvale can also contribute when we take on the new family or the new asylum seeker. So that's part of the whole thing.
So
Questions?
here,
Oh, in the chat. They're still setting up. Can Ngwa tell us about his wife and daughter, how often they stay in touch and when they might come to the US?
All the time. We stay in touch like all the time. Like this morning, my daughter, she can use the phone right now. She just pick it all the time. She just called me. Like sometimes she sees me holding the phone and smiling. She said, "Are you talking to her?" I say, "Yeah."
he gets this look on his face.
So she can't really understand. She can't really understand how possible. Sometimes she said, "Daddy, come out of the phone and see me and talk to me." So she can't really understand what is going on, the magic and everything that is going on the phone. And was it? Yeah, they probably will submitted the petition. Like after I got my asylum, automatically I can submit a petition for them to come in. Probably, let's say by God's grace, same time next year, around this time, maybe they will be here. Who knows?
But it takes a long time.
Yeah, I mean, that's the main point, just to reemphasize. And I guess I'm repeating what he just said, but remember the timeline again, 2019, 2021, when he finally gets his asylum approved. And now the lawyers can turn in the application to get his family here, which they've done. The system is so backed up, partly because of the previous administration decimating the State Department, that they won't even look at it for a year. And so then we're hoping,
Maybe, yeah.
and we're hoping, and then whatever the processing time is after that, he has to get interviewed here. His family has to go to the capital, to the U.S. Embassy in the capital in Cameroon to get interviewed. They want to make sure it's not a marriage of convenience, it's a real family and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not sure how long that processing will take. But even though, he's legal as of actually October 1st, I believe, we still got another year before perhaps they get here.
Yeah, he was granted asylum on September 1st, and Homeland Security has a month to appeal the judge's decision to grant asylum, which they basically said right away they're not going to do, but it's actually official as of the 1st of October. So then all those petitions got filed, and
But I will mention there's a phone app, if you will, application called WhatsApp, if you've ever heard of that, and it's for international calling. Basically, it's a phone over internet protocol, And he calls almost constantly. And so it's been good for him to have we helped him get a cell phone, but that's his lifeline to his family. And, so there is a lot of contact, as long as the internet and the electricity in Cameroon is a little bit spotty. And sometimes he'll go for a while when he can't reach them because of that. But basically, that's his lifeline to his family for the last 2 years. So I guess we're at the point of taking questions.
Yeah, we just took one.
Yeah, we just took one.
Anybody else? I have a question for you. Do you think Midvale is up to hosting another person?
We got David back here.
Yeah, oh, go ahead.
Looking at the amount of time and resources it took for one person, and we're looking at how many thousands of Afghans now that will have to go through this, where do we get the people to help with all
There's a difference between asylum seekers and refugees. And number one is the refugees, when they leave, my understanding, you can correct me, but my understanding is when they leave the military establishment, wherever they are, they're going to be at the place where Ngwa is right now.
That's not right.
No? Okay, go ahead.
So the reason that's not right is that they didn't give them refugee status. They gave them humanitarian parole. And that allowed them, because of, if you're a refugee, you have to go through all this international stuff to get refugee status here. And because of the evacuation, they weren't able to do that. So they kind of just snatched them out, and then they called them parolees instead of refugees. So they still are not quite far enough along the timeline like Mark described as a refugee would be, but the Biden administration is actively working to change their status so that they will be treated like refugees who can work when they come here and access government benefits and programs and all the things that he had to wait 2 years to do.
Yeah, clearly Toni is more expert on this than I am. I got what I said out of just reading newspapers,
Yeah,
but so they still need support. There's no doubt
Another.
about that, but it's a different situation.
So the people coming in at the border at a legal crossing, they're asylum seekers?
yeah,
Okay,
that's what he did.
okay.
Yeah,
So that means there's still a lot of people.
there are thousands and thousands and thousands. The need is just huge.
And part of the problem is the Trump administration, I'm not supposed to mention the name, the Trump administration made them-
You shall not be named.
legally, the laws say that when you apply for asylum, you come into the United States. They decided to do this, stay out of the country and wait. And so they're all, and actually Ngwa did a little bit of this too for about maybe a few weeks where they stay in Mexico. But Ngwa entered legally by applying at a point, which is important versus just coming across the river and then asking for asylum without doing the interview in the first place. So there's lots of different variations and it can get pretty confusing.
Oh, we got another one? Oh, John's iPhone wants to ask
Yeah.
a question.
Okay,
Hi,
just-
thanks, Tony. I really
what happened?
appreciate
Wait, wait.
like
Can
staying
you
back.
hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Well, wait, Ngwa, hold your comment while he asks. John,
Um,
go ahead.
Yeah, so could you say a little bit more about this requirement that Ngwa be released to live with someone who's a US citizen and how that requirement would be met going forward for other people that our congregation works with?
Well, we're all US citizens that are sponsoring him and them. And the person can live in their own apartment or whatever, as long as they are being supervised and provided for by US citizens.
Oh, okay.
He was supposed to only live with us temporarily until they got him another place to stay. But as things went on, we said, well, why does he have to move? We got a place for him.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
like just to add to what he said, staying back in Mexico, I can tell you, sometimes it's twice dangerous as where you're coming from. Like there's a lot of rape, kidnapping out there. A lot of those, I know most of those Spanish, those Honduras and those people that come right to the border, a lot of them, they are being raped and kidnapped. You share right at the southern border of Mexico,
Yeah,
right where they call Matamoros.
yeah.
Like Indians, they don't go there. They kidnap them and call your family back home to send money. It happens that it's very common there. So staying in Mexico was a very, very bad idea.
Any other questions?
We're getting close to the end of our time, I think.
Yeah. Last call.
Thanks for listening. Appreciate it.
Matt, go ahead,
Matt?
please. Unmute yourself. Matt? If you mute yourself, we can hear you.
Want to talk, Mats? That might,
Sorry, no, we were
Yeah,
just
there you go.
applauding. We were just applauding. It was not a
Oh.
race band. It was an applause. Many blessings to you all. That's
oh, okay.
Well, we're happy that you enjoyed it. And for next week, let me remind you that the superintendent for the state patrol will be here. Congratulations, sir, on your asylum. Thank you for being here. Thank you guys for hosting and showing us a possible vision for where we go. So appreciate it all and have a good week. Enjoy Halloween and be safe.